Coming up next on Words and Numbers, sexy chatbots.
Consumer sentiment is down, but should it be?
Los Angeles should be burning, but apparently isn't.
And the benefits of a conservative Supreme Court.
Coming up next on Words and Numbers.
Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Antony.
And this is Words and Numbers.
Words and Numbers is a Civil original podcast. Go to civil.com to learn more. That's CiVL.com. What's new and exciting in your world this week, Ant?
We should start off by telling the listeners that we have new times that will be appearing. We have appeared, Words and Numbers, at 10:30 a.m. on Wednesdays every week without fail for the past 8 years. And
this includes hospitalizations and surgeries. Yeah. You name. I recorded an episode like 20 minutes after I had surgery once.
Yeah,
in the hospital.
Yeah, and I was in the hospital with COVID at the beginning of COVID. Yeah, but we managed to get them out. But nonetheless, starting this week, we'll be coming out Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 a.m., so you can listen to us on your morning commute.
In the morning? Who the hell does anything at 7 o'clock in the morning?
Do you know, I'm at my desk at 6:30 every morning.
See, and you have just proved what I've been saying for a decade, 15, even 2 decades. You're an idiot.
We've received a couple of listener questions, and I'm not prepared to answer them in full, but they're interesting enough I wanted to mention them.
What a great way to start. We've got some questions. I'm not going to answer them, but listen to me anyway.
These are both from listeners' comments on YouTube. Devilman Sanchez says, please dedicate a small commentary on Venezuela and Argentina. As a Venezuelan listener, I would love to hear your opinions. And Devilman Sanchez, we are always happy to respond to listener questions, much more so to someone coming from Venezuela. And frankly, you could probably tell us more about what's going on with the Venezuelan economy than we can, but we will take a stab at it. Actually, I'll just give you an interesting thing I looked up in response to this. Venezuela's per capita income from 1975 to the present, so that's 50 years, half a century. Venezuela's per capita real GDP growth has averaged 0.3% per year.
It's not fantastic.
For context, United States' per capita real GDP has grown on average of 1.8%, so roughly almost 7 times that of Venezuela. If Venezuela, going back to 1975, if Venezuela's economy had grown at the same rate that the U.S. economy had grown over that same half century, the average Venezuelan today would be more than twice as wealthy as he is now.
And it should have grown at a much, much faster rate because Venezuela sits atop the world's largest oil reserve.
Yes, and therein lies an interesting question that we can get into when we do the whole episode, but that's a fascinating twist that Venezuela, hands down, is the single country that sits on the largest set of oil reserves.
It occurs to me that we've never done an episode on the resource curse.
Yes. That's why I put it off, because I have to do some research onto it.
I also have to do some research on it, but I think that would be a fascinating thing to talk about real soon.
Yeah. WatchDealer11, who comments often on our YouTube channel, says, please do an episode on Canada. And, I just threw together a couple of statistics thinking, we could say something about Canada. And the more I put together, the more I thought this is going to make a fascinating episode. Because here in the United States, one of the things that people keep repeating is, well, why can't we have a healthcare system like Canada? If you were in Canada, you wouldn't have to worry about, being, sent to the poorhouse because of healthcare costs. So I just did some quick Googling on average tax rates, Canada versus the U.S., and it seems to be the case, and don't quote me because I want to dig deeper, but it seems to be the case that for the median household in Canada versus the median household in the U.S., the median Canadian household is paying $11,000 more per year in taxes.
And how much do each of those households make prior to tax?
Oh, and that's very interesting. I don't know what, no, I do know the prior to tax. The median household income in Canada converted to US dollars is about $50,000 versus $80,000 in the US.
So they're making much, much less, and they're losing much, much more.
Right, yeah. And now you could say something like, well, yeah, but we've got all this free health care, to which I respond, but 11,000 a year is, I think that's ballpark what you would pay the employer's part of an employer-sponsored plan.
Yeah,
for a family,
actually,
not for an individual.
I can answer this with 100% clarity right now, to the extent that my family is normal and I live in a normal state, right? So there's always these variables. But the wife carries our medical. We pay $12,000 a year. The employer pays $12,000 a year.
Right, right.
So there you go. But I'm way more interested in that $30,000 variance in the median income.
Yeah, see, and that's an interesting thing as well, because I think the part that people tend to overlook, it's so easy to say, well, let's just have the government handle this and raise our taxes, and I'm happy to pay the extra taxes, whatever it is. The taxes slow the economy, and that comes back to you dressed up as, just like we saw, a $50,000 median income in Canada versus $80,000 in the U.S. Get Words and Numbers on CiVL.com and on CiVL's TV and mobile apps. Regular episodes are free. Sign up for an annual membership to support our show and for access to member-exclusive content. One thing I wanted to throw out for thought, and I've been talking a lot about this of late as I travel the country saying things economic. Consumer sentiment is down. And I believe the last number was, this is on a scale of 0 to, I don't know how high the scale goes, but anything over 100 on this University of Michigan's consumer sentiment scale, anything over 100 is considered very good. The people are happy. When you get below 100, it's reflecting more and more dissatisfaction with the economy. We're
Can
currently
I guess? Go
ahead.
Guess?
Yeah, please.
42.
Oh, how about that? Well, you're in the neighborhood. It's 58. It's not that bad, but nonetheless, 58 isn't,
but not great.
Isn't at all good. Yeah, it's not great. If you go back to 2015 through 2019, consumer sentiment averaged about 95. So think of the pre-COVID era, roughly 95. Since COVID, it's been around averaging about 65. This marked change. And what is puzzling to me is if you go back through our history and look at periods of U.S. history, and I'm talking about, since like 1950, 1960, look through periods of U.S. history when our unemployment rate was roughly what it is now, when our economic growth was roughly what it is now, when inflation was roughly what it is now. In those periods, Americans reported consumer sentiment numbers close to or even exceeding 100. In other words, we've seen this economy that we see right now. We've seen it before, and every other time we've liked it. Now all of a sudden we don't.
Why do you figure that might be?
I have a hypothesis. But somebody threw out to me the question: is it Trump derangement syndrome? And it's the first time someone had suggested that, and I thought, well, it is a psychological thing. Maybe it is. And it was only later I thought back to realize, wait a minute. This drop in consumer sentiment has existed throughout the Biden administration also.
Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with the president.
Well,
I think, frankly, it's the media.
Yeah, it might have to do with the idiotic polarization that we see, where everybody's lobbing bombs at everybody else all the time, claiming that everything is worse than it's ever been.
Right. Yeah.
And I have come into vicarious contact with young people who claim that the United States is the worst place in the world to live. These are, 18, 19-year-old people.
Who have lived precisely nowhere else.
Yeah, but look, if you have a television, you should know better. If you have a computer or a telephone, there's no excuse for being that ignorant. And yet, we see it all the time.
So, yeah, because what the media only shows us the bad stuff.
Yeah, but it's not only that, right? It's I don't want to lay this at the feet of the media when there's an entire industry of people who are out there whose only duty it is to spin the truth in such a way that benefits their preferred political party.
Right. Sure.
Right. And this exactly is why we get letters every week, emails, telling us how we have Trump derangement syndrome. But nobody ever bothers to remember that we had Biden derangement syndrome and Obama derangement syndrome, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You and I are more interested in criticizing power than party.
Right.
Right. Whoever's in power deserves a heavy dose of criticism. That's what keeps them honest. And
power doesn't magically become good when your guy is wielding it.
No, it most certainly does not. And then as soon as he's not wielding it anymore, his opponent is. And they go just a little bit further. I mean, think. Donald Trump says flag burning is now illegal, 2 Supreme Court cases notwithstanding. If we let him get away with it, what's going to be illegal next? I guarantee you it will be criticism of President Trump. And then the next president will just cheerfully continue down that merry road. Anyway, I'm going to lighten things up a little bit here because, boy, we went down an abyss there, didn't we? I'm going to ask you what 3 people who now that I think about it, you probably have never heard of have in common. What do Selena Gomez, Taylor Swift, see, now you have heard of that one, and Scarlett Johansson have in common?
Well, Selena Gomez is tennis, Taylor Swift is music, and Scarlett Johansson is an actress.
Well, you went 2 for 3.
Oh, really? Who did I miss?
Selena Gomez. You're thinking of
she's
Serena
tennis.
Williams. No, that's Serena Williams. Selena Gomez is a completely different person, but nonetheless, what do they have in common? Do you have any idea? You don't, right?
Beats me.
Yeah. There's a joke in there somewhere. Anyway.
They have this in common, that Davies doesn't know what they do.
Yeah, sidestepping the joke entirely. They each ended up as flirty chatbots on Meta.
No way.
Indeed.
I'm sure, without their permission.
Unbeknownst to them entirely. And it seems to be traceable back to one rogue Meta employee who decided to make these things. But now all of a sudden, you could have, if you were there at the right moment, you could have had a flirty Scarlett Johansson chatbot. And man, I got to tell you, I'm interested. Man, sign me up. Anyway, there's an entire movie about this called Her, which you should run right out and see. She's the voice of the chatbot in that movie. But here's the thing. The chatbots then took it on themselves to offer up sexy pictures of these people that it made itself.
Wow.
And you can see the kind of rabbit hole that we're doubtlessly going to be heading down from here on out.
Wow.
Because next month it's going to be movies, and the month after that it's going to be hardcore porn.
Well, but I keep seeing on Facebook videos, and I'm thinking this can't be right. This started up several weeks ago, and it turns out, they're AI-generated videos, and they look. If you look closely, you could tell there's something wrong, but they look good enough that at first glance you think this thing is real.
They're going to fool a bunch of 70 and 80-year-old people real fast.
Yeah. Oh, then they're going to be fooling younger people.
Yeah, that's right. It's going to become indistinguishable from reality any minute now.
Okay, so let me pause here for a second, because just a moment ago we were saying about the problems with the media only showing the bad news, not the good news. What happens when people are just cooking up videos that support whatever political position they have and releasing them? Yeah. And of course, people who agree with the political position are going to start copying them, sending them, forwarding them.
That's already happening. And we're going to get to a point when the video content is indistinguishable from reality, and we're almost there, it's going to be almost impossible for anybody to know what the truth is. And we got real problems coming up real soon as a result of that. Because it's already nearly impossible for people to fact check things that are obviously untrue.
Right, right.
What are they going to do when it's not so obvious?
But there's a potential, I don't know if this is a cure, but it would certainly help, a solution with blockchain. I forecast we're going to very quickly get to the point where a video is going to have a tag attached to it that you can, via blockchain, verify that verily this video came from an employee of Reuters who was on the scene recording, as opposed to some 15-year-old in his basement.
Except an employee at Meta just created chatbots of sexy women that we all want to talk to.
Right. No, but my point is that with blockchain,
but no,
it wouldn't
a Reuters
stop you.
A Reuters employee
I
can
see.
still create whatever the hell he wants, right? It'll cost him his job, but he could still do it. I don't know. There's no easy answer here. Blockchain's an interesting answer, but there's no easy answer. Mm-hmm. So we'll be following this as we go. But this, of course, brings us to the foolishness of the week when Homeland Security Barbie Kristi Noem, who is known for saying one dumbass thing after another, she is talking about, you may remember, Ant, when Donald Trump, our fearless leader in Big Toe, sent troops into an American city, Los Angeles. It seems cute because now it's D.C. and we're talking about Chicago. Shouldn't be doing any of it, but that's another topic for another day. He sent them into Los Angeles, and Kristi Noem said, I do know that L.A. wouldn't be standing today if President Trump hadn't taken action. Now, okay, there's always a little bit of political hyperbole when politicians start running their stupid mouths, but L.A. wouldn't be standing if President Trump, I mean, I've been to L.A. in the last year. It seemed under no grave threat of falling literally into the ocean.
Well, I have a question.
Or burning to the ground, which is what Kristi Noem said would have happened, would have burned to the ground.
But if indeed that's the case, I want to know why the fires aren't starting now. Because I saw, this would have been mid-July, that President Trump withdrew half of these troops. And am I correct that they've all been withdrawn now?
I'm not sure. They might well have been, but, if we needed X troops to keep it from burning to the ground, and now we have 0.5 X troops there, half of it should have burned to the ground.
Right.
I know some math.
Well, more than that, the numbers, I believe he sent originally 4,000 National Guard troops.
That's
so
correct.
I did a little bit of digging, and
it turns out there's a punchline here. Turns out.
Right. The Los Angeles police force has 9,000 officers. So it's not like the Los Angeles had 100 people enforcing the law and President Trump sent 4,000. He sent a force that was less than half the size of the force that was already there, and then cut it in half within 30 days.
And one would think, try and keep up with me here, one would think that if it were as bad as Kristi Noem would have us believe, that they would probably hire some more police officers.
Right.
I mean, I'm just throwing it out there.
Am I recalling correctly, James, that at the time, because I think we talked about it, weren't these National Guard troops deployed specifically to protect federal buildings, federal property?
It's so long ago I can't remember. The only memory that I have at present of National Guard troops are the ones in D.C. who were there to stop that rampaging crime. And look, I've been to D.C. lately. It's not great. right? There are neighborhoods in D.C. you're not going to go into. It's a rough
but that's
place.
always been the case.
Well, not always. It's worse now than it's been in a while, right? And then they say crime's coming down, and okay, it's just a bunch of bullshit, right? D.C. is a place where there are problems, but if those problems are so profound that we need to send the National Guard, why are the National Guard raking leaves and picking up garbage? Because that's what they're doing. And, it doesn't jibe. There's a problem there. And let's all be honest with each other. I read somewhere somebody worked out how much we're paying the National Guardsmen by the hour to do the raking and pick up the garbage, and it's $66 an hour.
Good Lord.
Right? Can't we just hire some people in D.C. for, I don't know, 15?
Right, and solve several problems. Right.
All
at a third the cost.
So there's all this nonsense swimming just below the surface to all this kind of stuff. But that we've got a cabinet-level person saying that the city of Los Angeles would have burned to the ground had we not sent these troops in there. It's just so disingenuous. I don't even know what to say about it.
Well, in her defense, this is part of the fallout, I think, that you get from doing things like firing the director of the Bureau of Labor Statistics because you didn't like what the statistics said. It wasn't even the director that was saying it, was the statistics. So all of a sudden, there's this pall over everybody who works for the administration. Don't say anything negative.
And not for nothing, Ant, you don't fire the head of the CDC because she's in favor of vaccines either.
Right.
And yet here we are. So remember when we just said a minute ago that you wouldn't be able to tell fact from fiction? Yeah.
Right. Sometimes it's not necessary.
Yeah.
Words and Numbers is part of the CiVL network. CiVL is a streaming platform dedicated to upgrading civilization by exploring better ways for people to organize, innovate, and thrive. At CiVL, we believe that societies flourish when their members honor the civic equality of all people and engage with one another through cooperation. CiVL seeks great minds from around the world to share bold ideas for fostering healthy, dynamic societies. By creating space for honest disagreement among people who share a commitment to building a better future, CiVL offers a refreshing alternative to divisive punditry and insular echo chambers. Words and Numbers is freely available, but those who subscribe to CiVL will access exclusive content, including regular live streams and conversations with remarkable people who are working to build a better society. For more information and to subscribe, visit CiVL.com. That's CiVL.com. Use the code Words and Numbers, that's one word, for 50% off an annual subscription.
Let's just move on, because maybe we can make sense of this next thing. What do we got this week?
You had suggested, this whole conversation started out when James said to me, after we were done recording last time, I'd like to do an episode on things that Trump has done well.
Well,
and then he...
All right, stop. Good God, stop, man. I didn't say that. I said...
You followed up immediately.
Yeah, I know, but let's give the actual story. I got asked to go on another podcast. It was Josh Martins asked me to go on Good Morning Liberty, and I'm happy to give him a plug, and you should all go right out and listen, and I'll be tweeting out the link for the one that I did with him real soon as I can dig it out of that mess I call an inbox. But Josh asked me, he said, I want to talk about things Trump might have gotten right. And I had to sit there and think about it, and I didn't come up with anything.
Well, you did, because you then followed up with the Supreme Court appointments.
Yeah. And we're probably going to piss a lot of people off by even saying such a thing. Right? Because he has put some pretty reliably conservative people on the Supreme Court, yielding a pretty reliable 6-3 conservative majority on the court.
Now, when you say conservative, I'm guessing you don't mean conservative in the sense of Republican Democrat.
Well, and that's probably the best place to start, right? When I say conservative, when I say, okay, what good has Donald Trump done? He's given us a court, and here I'm going to change the words a little bit to what I really mean and not what you should take away when you listen to a podcast on NPR. I think the Supreme Court is dispositionally conservative. And I'm going to go a step further and say that I think the Supreme Court should almost always be dispositionally conservative.
All right, so what do you mean by dispositionally?
Yeah, and that's right where to start, right? Because I don't mean Republican. Mm-hmm. Now, it's going to work out that way right now in this point in history, that if you're dispositionally conservative, you're probably a Republican. But I would submit that you and I are both dispositionally conservative, and neither one of us is Republican. Do I have you pegged
Yeah, that's
correctly?
probably fair. That's probably fair.
I know it's correct of myself, so one needn't be a Republican to be dispositionally conservative. As a matter of fact, I think right now it's actually harder to be a Republican conservative than to be a non-Republican conservative, because what exactly are Republicans conserving? What's that big giant list of things that traditionally we as Americans have always held dear that the Republican Party is now lining up to do battle for? And it's not. The Republican Party is a progressive party on the right. The Democratic Party is a progressive party on the left. And when you look at what the framers did with the Constitution, how they divided power, and again, we are talking about power, we're not talking about people, how they divided power, it was quite ingenious, right? Because, and we've talked about this many times, but we have to do it again. They gave us the House of Representatives with a 2-year election cycle. They gave us the Senate with a 6-year cycle, elected by state governments, but okay, you take the point. Now elected directly by the people, but nonetheless, every 6 years. And even now, given how we've gone from election from state legislatures to direct election of senators, you can look at a senator and a representative standing side by side, and you hear them talk for 5 minutes, and you can reliably predict who is who. Right.
The representatives necessarily have to be concerned with the order of the day, whatever it is that are concerning people, because they're there for 2 years.
Right now, that's right. They are actualized by a different impulse than senators are actualized by, at least in the large, because only 1/3 of the Senate is up for re-election every 2 years. So when 100% of the House is up for re-election, 1/3 of the Senate is up for re-election. And look, this has a salutary effect. Whatever is in the water right now is not necessarily going to rip through government. And then you add a president there with a 4-year cycle, so right between the two, and you generally, I mean, you can override a veto, but you generally need his signature on legislation to get anywhere with anything. That's a difficult batch of things to negotiate. But it's not so difficult that it doesn't happen. Right? And all kinds of stupid ideas come along, but look how much we're protected from stupid ideas. And I'm going to take the pro-Trump side right now, just to shut people up. Even with what's happening in Texas with redistricting, I'm not sure that Trump can maintain his grip on the House of Representatives. I'm just not sure. I think this Texas thing might well backfire.
Even if he were much more loved than he is, he'd be hard-pressed, because it's typically, if my understanding is correct, it's in this first House election after the presidential election, it typically goes the opposite way of the White House.
Yeah, it very typically does. Not always, but very typically. And Trump's popularity is sub 40% at this point, which is a very bad sign. And when they did the redistricting in Texas, which I actually think is their right. I think you're in government in the state, you redistrict however you want, follow your own laws. That's what the Constitution requires. It seems to make sense to do it immediately after every census, and generally that's how it's been done, but it needn't be that way. So, okay, go nuts. But the Texans, the Texas Republicans, what they did, the presumption they made is that former Trump voters would continue to vote in Trump-like ways. And the thing that they laid their hat on is Trump voting Latinos. And Trump voting Latinos, if you look at the more granular data that we tend not to talk about, have walked away from Trump almost completely at this point. So, this whole thing was designed to give him 5 more seats in the House, but it's all predicated on him maintaining the Latino vote, which is probably not going to happen. So, hey, we'll see what happens there. But if the Democrats retake the House, I think it's a 100% certainty that they will impeach Donald Trump again. I don't think they can help themselves. Do you?
Now, well, we've gotten to the point now where impeachment kind of doesn't matter. Back when we were younger, impeachment was a big deal. Bill Clinton getting impeached was huge. First time since Andrew Johnson.
We weren't that young when Bill Clinton got impeached, right?
But here's the question. Are there the votes in the Senate to remove him? I don't think there are, right?
Absolutely not. And that's the design. The design is that the House kind of flits away from side to side, given the passions of the day. And when you read The Federalist, passion is always a bad thing, right? When we say follow your passion now, the framers would think we sound like a bunch of idiots. You don't follow passion, you extinguish it, right? That's how the word was used in 1787. And there it is, right? The House is designed to kind of move with the people. The Senate is designed as a bulwark against that. The president is a further insulation from that. But from time to time, idiotic things go from the House to the Senate to the president, and everybody's all in favor. And then the Supreme Court gets to weigh in. And I ask you this, do you want a Supreme Court that is actuated by the prejudices of the day, the passions of the moment, or, as I contend, would you prefer to have a Supreme Court that's dispositionally conservative, whose first reaction to literally everything is, hey, wait a minute, slow down, let's think about this. Are you sure? Does this comport with the Constitution? Does this run afoul of laws that you fools have already passed? Wouldn't you prefer to have that break on the process than to not have the break on the process? And I would submit that the only people who don't want the break are the people who care more about getting their way than getting their way within the rules of the game. We all want to get our way. I want to get my way all the time. But there are rules. I mean, I want to be a millionaire. I don't go rob banks until I have $1 million. There are rules. Wouldn't you prefer that the elected branches of our government follow the rules and have an unelected body holding their feet to the fire?
Right.
And that's the positive case in favor of a dispositionally conservative Supreme Court. And we've got one right now. Now, I think also we have a Supreme Court that's a little too partisan for my tastes. But that's another discussion for another day. I think there are people on that court who will do anything Donald Trump wants. And that's not what I'm talking about. Right, I'm talking about what I just laid out very clearly. So when you send me the hate mail, and you will, send it given what I said, not what you think you heard me say, which is often why we get hate mail. So I want to go back in time a little bit to show you what happens when you don't have a dispositionally conservative Supreme Court. What do you think of contraception, Ant?
Contraception? What do I think of it?
Yeah.
Generally speaking, I think it should be left to the individual to mess with it or not.
I agree. The people of Connecticut did not agree, and they made it illegal once upon a time, long time ago. And then, it was also illegal for doctors to discuss this with their patients. Why? Because it's illegal. It would be like a doctor discussing a heart removal surgery with a patient. Well, you don't do that because heart removal surgery is illegal. Okay. Should the people of Connecticut, through their elected representatives, be able to outlaw contraception? Now, you and I both think that's a fabulously stupid idea.
Now, when you say outlaw, do you mean outlaw within the confines of Connecticut?
Yes.
Yeah.
Connecticut doesn't get to legislate for any other state.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing where I think Americans today tend to go off the rails, and Americans on both sides, the left and the right, they get it in their head that they're right about something, and I'm not arguing whether they would be or not, but they get in their head they're right about something, and they want to impose that view on everybody.
Yeah, all the time. So there was a court case, Griswold versus Connecticut. Made it all the way to the Supreme Court. You've read the Constitution. More importantly, you've read Article 1, Section 8. You can see all the things that Congress can legislate, and then that's by 1968, I want to say, when this case was heard. The doctrine of incorporation is already alive and well, so, we are applying certain things, the Bill of Rights, to the states. So Congress isn't involved. So what the hell is the Supreme Court looking at it? Well, the Supreme Court can weigh in on state cases in certain sets of circumstances, and you're going to have to find a violation in the Bill of Rights somewhere. Does the Bill of Rights contain the word contraception? No. So right off the bat, you've got a high hill to climb. Now, it doesn't include the word internet either. And clearly we apply the First Amendment to the internet, so maybe, just maybe, there's something in the Bill of Rights that would apply. What might it be, Ant?
Well, I need to clarify something before we move on. What is the hypothetical question you're putting before the Supreme Court right now? Is it, can a state...
No, it's easy. Can a doctor, the first question is, can a doctor discuss contraception with the patient?
Right. Yeah, and that has all kinds of First Amendment problems wrapped up in it.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe we got a speech thing going on here.
But the other thing,
that larger question, right?
Yeah, can Connecticut outlaw contraception within the confines of Connecticut, to which I looking at the Constitution, see a list of powers granted to the federal government, and then the statement, anything not listed here is reserved to the states and the people. So I would have to throw my hands up and say, if I were on the Supreme Court, no, we've got nothing to say about this. This is a matter between Connecticut and its voters.
Or maybe you could conclude that a doctor can discuss literally anything with a patient.
Now that's another matter, the discussion thing. That seems to be, okay, so now we have a problem.
Right?
Because
now you got a problem. Because can a doctor and a patient discuss a bank robbery?
Yeah.
Can they discuss how the patient's going to kill his...
Right.
Can they discuss how the patient's going to go home and kill his wife?
Right.
And be medically untraceable? We're never going to say that. There are limits right there. I just give you a limit that everybody would agree to. Everybody with a brain in his head, anyway.
Now, the comeback is, but those things are illegal, to which you would reply, yes, but under Connecticut law, so is contraception.
That's right. So Justice William O. Douglas, in order to find a way for the Supreme Court to get involved with this, said that there are penumbras and emanations that come from specific, explicit guarantees in the Bill of Rights which apply to this case. And these penumbras and emanations yield a right to privacy, heretofore unspoken, that a doctor and a patient have.
And this right to privacy changes the question how. For example,
well, now the
given
doctor
what he just said, could the doctor now, is the doctor now free to discuss how the guy can kill his wife under that right to privacy?
I guess we would have to ask Justice Douglas whether that was right. My guess is he would say, no, I didn't mean it like that. But look, this is what happens when you get what we call an activist court, right? When a court knows the answer it wants to find and then goes and invents a judicial doctrine to find it,
right?
All hell breaks loose. And anybody who's been listening carefully should know that I'm going to talk about Roe versus Wade next. Because Roe versus Wade comes out just a few years later. And now abortion, not in the Bill of Rights, abortion is legal everywhere and always, says the Supreme Court. More or less, right? That's an article. That's an episode for another day, the finer points of Roe versus Wade. We're just dealing with it in the large today. Abortion is legal in the United States everywhere and always because why? The right to privacy, which doesn't exist in the Bill of Rights. It was invented by Justice Douglas about contraception.
Right.
So somehow, and I want you to really think about this, somehow the right of a doctor and a patient to discuss contraception equals the right to unfettered abortion.
Yeah, and notice what's going on here. The justice invents this right to privacy, and unlike any of the other rights that actually are listed and described, there is no description of this. We don't know what its limits are because he just made it up.
Yep.
And this is what irks me about our history over the past 100+ years in this country, is that we encounter something and we want the easy way out, which is just get the Supreme Court to bless it.
Get it
rather than going
Supreme
through.
Court.
We have an amendment procedure. If this is a big deal, let's get an amendment.
That's right. And if you, I'm speaking about abortion right now, and notice neither of us have offered our opinion on abortion. We haven't on this podcast, scrupulously. And we're not going to today either. So nothing I say has anything to do with our opinion on abortion. We're talking about the constitutionality of abortion. And we have said many times, or at least I have, I think you have too, Ant, that there are perfectly good ideas out there that are completely unconstitutional, and there are very lousy ideas out there that pass constitutional muster no problem. Right? So you draw your own conclusions. But the court was wrong in Roe versus Wade. It was just wrong. It's not a privacy issue.
And I want to underline what James is saying here. He's about to tell you why he thinks it's wrong. That has nothing to do with his opinion of the outcome. It has to do with the law.
Yeah. There's nothing in the Constitution about abortion. Nothing whatsoever. There's nothing that you could construe in the Constitution to get to legal abortion across the country. It's just not there. So whatever it is you are, pro, anti, doesn't matter. It's a state issue.
Okay, so let me take the pro-abortion side here. Someone who is in favor of abortion is going to say, yes, but I have the right to do with myself as I please. And
No,
if you're going If you're going to,
No, you don't.
okay. If you're going to say I don't, then all kinds of other things fall under that category.
But we already live in a world in which all kinds of other things fall into that category. You can't go do heroin. My body, my choice? Well, no, not exactly. Not exactly. We even have laws about hurling yourself off tall buildings. You can't kill yourself. Your body, your choice? No, not exactly.
The second one's moot.
Yeah, but it is, but as a performative piece of legislation, it's not.
Okay.
We do hereby respect life so much that we're going to make it illegal for you to take your own, even though we know we can't enforce it. There's something to that makes sense,
and
right?
Let me push back on your heroin example, because I would argue you're using a bad example to support another bad example. That is, heroin should not be illegal. That itself is unconstitutional.
Oh, no, look, I agree with everything you just said. I'm just giving you an example. When people say my body, my choice, they generally have no idea what they're talking about. They want it to mean one very specific thing. Mm-hmm. But it means hundreds of different things. Hundreds of different things. There are places I can't go. There are things I can't take to places that I go. We have laws about all kinds of things that really fall down to my body. I can't walk outside naked, for example. Well, it's literally, we're talking about my body now, no, but you can't do it. And everybody in Tucson, Arizona should be very, very grateful that law's on the books. But, nonetheless, you see the larger point here, right? It's a state issue. Now, you can make a couple of cases here, depending on which side you're going to fall down on. If you're pro-abortion, you're probably going to say, look, I might live in a state that makes this illegal. What am I supposed to do? Well, yeah, that's right. What are you supposed to do? Because you can't do that. Congratulations. That's the state you live in. And then somebody else is going to say, on the other side, I think that this is murder if it's legal anywhere. Hell, anybody can take a bus. If it's legal anywhere, it's de facto legal everywhere. And then you add in abortion pills that are mailed to people surreptitiously and this sort of thing. And you've got another batch of problems to deal with. But that doesn't make it anything other than a state issue. Mm-hmm. That's by definition what it is. And as people get worked up about it, they lose sight of the constitutionality aspect of the problem. You have to face the Constitution first, regardless of what answer you want. And when Supreme Court justices like William O. Douglas, he's just one of many. Dwight Eisenhower actually once referred to his appointment of Earl Warren, the man who decided Brown versus Board of Education, something that we're going to talk about with Clark, because Clark and I are on opposite sides of that case. And I still don't know why we have a disagreement. He won't tell me. He wants to do it live and spring it on me at the last minute like a bastard. But okay, I'm up for it. Eisenhower referred to his nomination of Earl Warren as, quote, the biggest damn fool mistake I ever made, because he was an activist judge. He was a conservative governor, and he became an activist judge. Because once you get on the court, now you can be whatever the hell you want. And this is what Donald Trump found out about Amy Coney Barrett, who he nominated, put on the court, and then she started ruling against him. And what do all of his acolytes say? She's compromised. No, she's Supreme Court Justice. That's how this works.
Let me go back to a difficult piece of what you just said. Now I'm going to take the role of someone who is anti-abortion, and you're going to tell me that this should be a state issue, and I am going to say, look, this is murder, and it doesn't matter that it shouldn't be a state issue. Murder should be a national thing. The Supreme Court absolutely should step in.
Murder's a state crime.
Murders themselves are state crimes.
If you went in and murdered somebody in a federal court, they would take you out, put you in a state prison. You'd be tried in a state court, and you'd be put in a state prison.
Okay, but the difference is every state has laws against murder. Murder's illegal in all 50 states. So I don't have to worry about that being a state issue. Now, in terms of abortion, now I have to worry because it's not illegal everywhere.
Yes, you do. You do have to worry. And states have different laws about when we can pull the plug on grandma. And the central question that people are wrestling with at the end of life is grandma still human? Is grandma still grandma?
Right.
And that's exactly the same question that we wrestle with abortion on the front end of life. When does it become human? Because we could all agree, I think, that whenever it becomes human, whenever that might happen to be, from that second on, you can't kill it. So our real question is when it becomes human. I mean, you would have to be, I think, so wanting in candor and conscience to deny that that's the question, that you're probably not listening to this podcast anyway.
And there's all kinds of things that people are going to point to, extenuating circumstances that, the thing is alive inside somebody else and the viability and all that stuff.
I'm not talking about any of that.
Which all of that becomes subtext to your original statement. Is this human or not? Now, if you're going to say there are instances in which, despite the fact you're dealing with a human being, it's okay to kill them. All right, and be aware that logic can be applied elsewhere.
It gets very, very difficult with that because people will say idiotic things like, well, I'm completely anti-abortion except in cases of rape or incest. Well, is it not human under those circumstances? You can't be. I would submit that if you're anti-abortion, you must be anti-abortion under all circumstances, unless the life of the mother is at risk.
Or you're basing your argument on something other than the question of whether this is a human.
Right, but I would submit that any other question is the incorrect question. Now, notice I'm not offering an answer to that question. I'm just saying that that's the essential question.
Let me go back, still playing the role of someone who is anti-abortion. And I'm hearing everything you're saying, and I'm looking around and seeing all these various states in which, because of abortion, in my mind, humans are being killed. And something's got to be done because this is no longer a legal thing in my mind. It's a moral issue. And so I'm very happy to have a president who packs the Supreme Court with justices who are going to rule the way I want them to rule. And I claim now, speaking for myself, that what you have just done is something extremely dangerous. If indeed you achieve, and let's assume that the court packing and all of that achieves your goal, which is wall-to-wall abortion is outlawed, you have also destroyed the rule of law. You have destroyed the Constitution as a bulwark, a guardian of our freedoms against the government. Because all it takes now is for the other guy to pack the court with his people and to decide whatever they want, because the Constitution now no longer stands in the way. It no longer protects me.
Well, it no longer protects you because you were wrong.
No, I mean, it no longer protects anyone.
No, it does. It absolutely does. It protects people who make the correct argument in the face of the constitutional text itself. And look, Donald Trump did pack the court, and the court did take on abortion. And what did that court do? In 2022, it was Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. They kicked it back to the states. Mm-hmm. It was exactly the right thing to do. That was well decided.
My point here is, even if you feel that the topic at hand is a moral issue, if you're willing to go around the Constitution on your moral issue, other people are going to go around the Constitution on other issues, and you don't have a Constitution.
That's right. And that is exactly why we need a dispositionally conservative Supreme Court.
Yes. Now, a possible answer is, go get a constitutional amendment. Now, you might say in response, but that's really difficult.
That's right.
Yes, it's supposed to be difficult because we're a nation of many different people, of many different beliefs and many different attitudes and constraints. You've got to get us all, you have to get a super majority of us agreeing with this thing.
If your idea is so good, you don't have to shove it down everybody's throat.
Yes. And if you do have to shove it down people's throats, or if you're going to try and go around them, then
might not be that
good. Maybe it's not good, or really you're not interested in living in a democracy, in a republic. You're interested in living in a dictatorship.
We have had constitutional amendments that are first-class idiocy. First class. I give you prohibition.
Right, yes.
And then, 10 or so years later, people got together and said, what the hell were we thinking? Let's get rid of this. And I would submit that for things not in the Constitution, not specifically mentioned in the Constitution, that's the only constitutional thing you can do to change the meaning of the Constitution.
But look at what we're talking about here. Civil's whole thing is upgrading civilization. And it used to be the case that when we had a disagreement, we talked about it and we came to some consensus.
For those of you who are confused by what Antony is doing, we have gotten into so what territory here.
Yeah. So we have in the past sat down and discussed things civilly. And that's how we got prohibition. It's how we got rid of prohibition. We don't do that anymore. We just beat each other over the head. And now, I argue, this is why presidential elections have become so important. It doesn't have anything to do with the president or his policies. It has to do with the fact that this is the guy that gets to appoint Supreme Court justices, and the Supreme Court is how I beat other people over the head.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to exert all kinds of authority every way we can over those other bastards who you all hate. And then they're going to do it. And then we're going to do it. Then they're going to do it. Then we're going to do it. And this is, as old people like to say, this is no way to live. This is not the way to do it. The way to do it is to, dare I say it, familiarize yourself with the text of the rules. I can't tell you, and I taught constitutional law at the college level probably for 20 years. I got yelled at each of those 20 years when I introduced the case Roe versus Wade. Every single time somebody wanted to take a swing at me. And I said, look, I'm your con law professor and you're 18. What do you think the odds are that I might know something that you don't? And that usually took enough of the air out of it to move forward. And then I would say the following. What part of Roe versus Wade's decision do you think I'm probably going to get wrong? And they would say, yeah, women have the right to abortion. I said, hey, take it easy. Take a deep breath. That's not the question I asked. I asked what part of the text you think I'm going to end up misinterpreting. And it always, literally every time, I was able to get these people to admit they had never read the text of that decision.
Right. They don't care about the law. They care about the outcome.
The outcome. That's right. And they commit the same terrible crime against constitutional republics that William O. Douglas committed and that countless other Supreme Court justices have committed. And if you don't like talking about abortion, and I get that you wouldn't, we actually don't either in a lot of ways. We could easily talk about the Commerce Clause.
Right.
Which has been abused and stretched in every direction to yield every outcome that everybody ever wanted. We could talk about tariffs. That'd be okay, right? The Constitution clearly gives the authority to tariff to the Congress. Clearly. There's no doubt. And the law that Donald Trump decided to use to justify imposing tariffs doesn't include the word tariff doesn't include the word tax, doesn't include any word that's even remotely related to tariffs. It's about national emergencies. What's the national emergency we have that causes us to have to put tariffs on Japanese products? Yeah, I don't know.
And if it is a national emergency, why are we delaying the tariffs?
Yeah, if it's a national
so many
emergency,
of these tariffs he announces and then he puts off.
And if it's a national emergency, why can none of us agree on what the actual emergency is? Right. And these are very, very simple, basic political questions.
You started off with the basics of talking about the separation of powers, and this is an important one. Anything that has to do with taxing people.
Anything.
Not only is it decided by Congress, but the bill must originate in the House specifically.
In the House.
The founders designed it so that the portion of government that is most immediately answerable to the people is the only portion of government that is able to begin the conversation about taxes.
And there you go, right? So, and look, the separation of powers, it seems almost trite, right? The framers thought that ambition would counteract ambition, the word straight from James Madison's pen. They never thought that people in the federal government would put party above country. As a matter of fact, the framers didn't think about party much at all.
Or worse, to equate party with country.
Party doesn't appear in the Constitution. It doesn't appear in the Federalist, not in the way we use it today, right? The word party appears, but it's not as a political party. And maybe they should have, because they were political men. They knew about parties, right? It's not that they were ignorant of the very concept. They weren't. And, you know, they also gave us, in addition to the separation of powers, federalism. And federalism was at least as important as the federal separation of powers. At least as. Because most people at the time thought of themselves as Virginians first and Americans second. Right? Your state was really where it was at. The federal government, that was just this thing in Washington. Or, you know, Rhode Island or New York, depending on what time we're talking about. But Washington, D.C., where it came ultimately to rest. And both of these things, federalism and separation of powers, were incredibly important. And they were supposed to work together. And now, more often than not, the three branches of government line up against the people in a lot of very important ways. They certainly line up against the Constitution. And the states have become administrative subdivisions of the federal government.
Yes.
They're partners now. They're not warring actors. And that was the design. So, you know, to the extent we've strayed from the design, we have all lost. And what should you be demanding? What should you be demanding? You should not be demanding that you win the arguments that you think are important. You should be demanding that we all play according to the rules of the game, and anybody who doesn't has to go.
Yeah, and the founders had this right. One of the great quotes is that we're to be a nation of laws, not a nation of men. And that's precisely what they meant, that the law is what matters. If it starts to matter who's been elected and who's on the Supreme Court, you've lost the battle immediately. You're not a nation of law.
Tom Paine said, in America, the law is king. There you go. That sounds about right. Doesn't work out that way, of course, but sounds right. Anyway.
But what it also means is there are going to be laws that you disagree with. And part of that is living in a democracy, living peaceably. Because the alternative is that, you know, we start open hostilities against each other. One of the stopgaps that we had in place that we've lost is the differences in laws amongst the states. And to that extent, agree with abortion or not, for the Supreme Court to throw it back to the states lets us take a step back in that direction of understanding, look, we disagree with each other. You go do your thing in Connecticut. I'm going to go do my thing in Alabama, and they're going to be different things.
It was the best decision given the nature of the conflict and the words of the Constitution. It was the best answer you could get. In a way, it's an answer that makes literally no one happy.
But it beats the alternative.
Yes, by a country mile. Because if the Constitution doesn't matter, nothing does. And we're just going to be at each other's throats all the time for the rest of our history. And again, that's no way to live. It's just not. I say it all the time, and H.L. Mencken said something very similar. We get the politics we deserve. And if you want better, you have to deserve better. And in order to deserve better, you have to be better. Now, I know the odds of that happening are slim to none. Indeed, the American founders did not found a republic based on the idea of the inherent goodness of man. They founded it on the inherent worth of the individual, but that's different. So, hoping that people will get better is just that. It's a hope. It's probably not going to happen. But if we don't try, I can guarantee you it will never happen.
Yeah, and I'll throw out as a more practical so what. What do you do about this? The way to start is respecting those around you. And I don't mean people who you agree with. Go find someone who you fundamentally disagree with and have a civil conversation with them. Have a cup of coffee. Respect the person as a person, and that will rub off. And that person will go and do the same. And before you know it, we'll have a much more civil society.
Yeah, and one of the greatest rounds of applause I ever got. You always remember when a big room bursts into applause because of something you said, right? Some person raised his hand and said, "How can we make Congress better?" And I sat back and I said, "Well, I'm not sure you can, but I would start with a literacy test. And in order to pass the literacy test, I would have every member of Congress every year read the entirety of the Constitution out loud, because I'm convinced most of them have never touched it, let alone read it. And I don't think that's a bad idea, and I don't think that's necessarily all that onerous if you're of a mood to tell the rest of us how to live." Anyway, we've run kind of long. I like it too. We've run kind of long today, so probably let's just cut it there, brace ourselves for the flood of hate mail to come. And this week, more than most, take a deep breath. Sit in the dark for an hour. I suggest listening to Marillion when you do that, but yeah, you do you. And be nice to each other. Kindness goes so much further than you think. And you know what? Everybody kind of needs a little bit of it. So be nice to each other. Ant, I'll catch you next week.
See you next time, James. Words and Numbers is a Civil original podcast. We work with Civil to advance their mission of upgrading civilization by exploring ideas that promote civic equality and cooperation. We believe the most pressing issues humans face, war, poverty, debt, tribalism, arise from coercive institutions that bring out the worst in us. We at Civil look to voluntary solutions to these and other problems. We invite you to explore Civil's new platform at civil.com. That's CiVL.com.